Welcome to Roofing Road Trips, the podcast that takes you on a thrilling journey across the world of roofing. From fascinating interviews with roofing experts to on-the-road adventures, we'll uncover the stories, innovations, and challenges that shape the rooftops over our heads. So fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to another episode of Roofing Road Trips by Roofers Coffee Shop. My name is Danny Sheehan. I will be your host today. I am joined by three rock star industry professionals today to talk about the biggest advocacy event in the industry, Roofing Day in DC. It is just around the corner, and we are so excited for such an important day for us all to gather on Capitol Hill. So to start off, we're going to jump right in with some introductions of who we're talking to today. Dwayne, why don't you start off?
Sure. Dwayne Musser. I'm Vice President of Government Relations for the National Roofing Contractors Association. And great to be here from our office on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and look forward to our discussion.
Awesome. Thank you. Brad, how about you?
Yeah. Hey, Brad Stein. I'm Director of Federal Affairs for the National Roofing Contractors Association. Full disclosure, I started in the fall in NRCA. So technically, this is also my first roofing day. But having said that, I spent 15 years on Capitol Hill. So I was on the other side of the meetings, if you will. And I also spent a decade within the association world. So I am very familiar with the importance of fly-ins and the impact that they bring for the industry. So really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to my first roofing day in a couple weeks.
Yeah, what a valuable perspective to bring. Yeah. Will, go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Hello, my name is Will Lorenz. I'm president of General Coatings. We're a manufacturer of spray foam and roof coatings, and a longtime member of NRCA, a longtime participant in Roofing Day, a member of the Roofing Alliance, and a supporter of just getting out there and having a positive advocacy about what roofing can do to help the United States and its clients.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, gentlemen, all for being here today. We are all very familiar with Roofing Day. I think we are all here in support of what we are trying to accomplish. But for those contractors who may not be familiar with what Roofing Day is, can we talk about what the actual event is about and why it's so important for the roofing industry?
Sure. Thank you, Danny. I'll start off just by saying Roofing Day in DC is our annual advocacy event. It's the largest advocacy event in the roofing industry, which focuses on federal government policies that impact our industry. We know that's very significant, especially these days. And it's the one opportunity where all of our industry, our entire industry, and I want to stress that NRCA leads this, but we do it with our partners, Roofers Coffee Shop, and other associations, whether it's state and regional associations or other national roofing industry associations are our sponsoring partners. We all come together in all segments: contractors, manufacturers, distributors, consultants, anybody who's involved in the roofing industry. This is the biggest industry event where we all come together and we speak with one voice on the issues that are critical to the future prosperity of our industry. So coming up here on April 14th and 15th, folks will gather on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and we'll have some educational and training sessions, and then some meetings with senators, representatives, and congressional staff on Capitol Hill that afternoon of that Wednesday. And it's really important that we have strong presence, because democracy is a participatory sport. We need to come back as an industry and be seen on Capitol Hill and get our message out. So that's what this is all about, basically.
I love that. I love the idea that democracy is a participation sport. You have to be involved in order to have your voice heard.
What's the old saying? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? Mm-hmm. I've heard that so many times over the years, but it's pretty true. So, I couldn't say it any better myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, this registration deadline is fast approaching. April 3rd is the last day to register to attend Roofing Day on April 14th and 15th. So if someone is still considering attending, they're not completely convinced that they're able to make the trip, what would you say to really empower them to choose yes?
That's a great question. Actually, hot off the press, for those who are actually thinking about still coming, we are extending the deadline from April 3rd to April 7th. We've actually heard from a handful of folks that, they're trying to get travel logistics set up, and, we don't want to sort of have them lose the opportunity to participate if they can. So we decided to, today, actually, to extend the deadline through April 7th. So that gives us, the weekend and the following Monday for folks to sort of, make it happen if they can. So having said that, I would just say sign up as soon as possible. Really, it's a great opportunity for industry professionals to learn about how federal policies can have a huge impact on their companies in the roofing industry. They'll also learn how to be an effective advocate for our industry with members of Congress and congressional staff. And, that's not necessarily an inherent skill for many folks. And, I'll just say that even if it's not, our folks in the industry are the experts. And so members of Congress and staff want to hear from folks that are coming, right? And so, please, I think that's probably the most important message that we can relay to anybody that's thinking about coming is you are the experts, and they do want to hear from you. Also, it's a great networking opportunity, to come together with fellow roofing industries. We hold a few receptions, which you'll hear about, later on. And so that's always a wonderful opportunity. The website to get more information and to register is www.nrca.net/roofing day. And you can also reach out to us in the NRCA DC office directly at 202-400-2591. So, Dwayne and I and Terry are here to help however we can. And I think I saw Will's hand up.
Yeah, I'm signed up, and I'm looking forward to it. I've been out there, I think, since the inception, and I think it's just a great place not only to network, but it's been a prime example for me learning how to interact with regulators and congressmen and state officials too. Because you take the same basis forward there, and I just say that I resonate the same thing you say, Brad. Is if we're not having a discussion about the roofing needs, someone else is getting ahead of us and may close off opportunities for all of us. And it's a shame if we don't really act in one voice to get it resolved in the best manner for roofing.
Well said.
Yeah, I think that really helps us kind of cue into the next topic here, because I do think that sometimes it's intimidating to go and plan this trip to DC and walk into an official's office and have, you're not really sure. You're not necessarily well spoken on the issue, but you're dealing with these issues every single day in the field, in your daily work in some capacity. So can we talk about what attendees can expect from the Roofing Day itinerary so that they're prepared walking into these meetings?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely really good point about sort of first timers in particular. And we at NRCA, we certainly take that into account, over the course of the 2 days, and you can see it in the programming. First day, Roofing Day attendees will gather on Tuesday afternoon, April 14th at 3:30, I believe, is when the opening remarks, sort of start. And then we do, speaking of that training, we do some advocacy training and briefing on this year's advocacy issues. That's really important. We want to educate and make everyone feel comfortable, right? When they're heading to the Hill the next day, we want to inform them as much as we can. And so, that's a big part of what's on the itinerary the first day. Also, I think we set aside time for the groups. We kind of group everyone in states, and we set aside time for them to meet with their groups to sort of pre-plan, kind of get organized, who's going to say what, who's going to lead the meetings. We provide time to do that too, because that's really important, with respect to just getting organized and feeling comfortable. And then also, I think I mentioned earlier, we have, networking receptions. The first networking reception is that Tuesday night. It's at Art and Soul, which is it's a restaurant in the hotel, but it's, the hotel's on Capitol Hill, which is a little different from last year. We're in walking distance to the meetings. And so, they're going to have the Capitol like sort of right in the backdrop. So it's going to be really, really cool. Sort of that first networking reception. Everyone's going to get excited, and, the buzz will be palpable. And, I'm really, that's always the kind of the most fun part for me, is to see that and everyone's excitement, leading up to Capitol Hill Day the following day.
There's definitely an energy to it when you're out there with everyone else. You can see the Capitol. It's great.
Yeah.
Yes. And then just to give an overview of Wednesday, April 15th, the big day, roofing day, when we go up on the Hill. We'll start off with breakfast, of course, and a keynote speaker. And then we're also really going to focus on career and technical education this year. So we're going to have kind of like a small panel discussion with a couple of folks in town who work full time on career and technical education, because that's such an important component to our workforce strategy. And they will be focused on that. We've heard a lot from our members that's a real important issue right now, and it's gaining. Well, one of the really cool things we've seen recently is that's really taking off on Capitol Hill. We have seen both Republicans and Democrats wanting to do more with career and technical education. And of course, we'll get into this in a minute with the issues. We're advocating for more funding for career and technical education. So that's going to be a focus. And then also, we're going to have a couple of experts to talk on housing policy, because we're focused on affordable housing, to give us the latest from Capitol Hill on those issues. We'll then head up to Capitol Hill with everybody, do a quick picture on the Capitol steps, everybody together, and then head to our meetings. Members will have, or I should say, registrants will have anywhere from 3 to 5 meetings, depending on where their business and homes are located in congressional districts, and or other people from their state, in terms of how the meetings are grouped together. So folks will have their meetings on Capitol Hill between noon and 5, and then we'll finish up with a wrap-up reception where everybody can come back and relax, have a few drinks, network with your colleagues, and the big thing there is sharing experiences from the day, of course. And then one final note, the next morning we do have on the schedule again our architectural historical tour of Capitol Hill, of some of the buildings. There's some really cool architecture here on Capitol Hill that's very historic, and folks have really enjoyed seeing that in recent years. Durable Slate Company is the one that gives that tour. And so that's at 10 o'clock here at the DC office on Capitol Hill. So that's kind of our last thing. So that's an overview of the itinerary.
I'd just like to say, Dwayne, it's always been a great experience for me. I learned so much when you brought members of Congress up there to speak and tell us a little bit about how the inner workings of things go on, and just really how cooperative government is. We see that, news and sort of tries to divide us, but really government's looking for a solution, and people are dedicated professionals there. And I'm really just excited always to hear their thoughts on roofing and what we can do to get our voice heard there.
That is a really good point, Will, in terms of, what you said about members of Congress really do want to try and get things done. And now what you see in the media is sometimes, and not sometimes, a lot of times, a little different. And there is definitely, there's more polarization. It's never been more difficult to kind of work in this line of work, but members of Congress, they want to try and work with us, and they don't always agree on everything, obviously, but they do want to work with us, and that's what this is all about.
And just one point to add to that. I mean, we at NRCA, we're pretty strategic in when we try to identify the issues that we want to talk about too, and we try to make them bipartisan. And so the legislation that we bring up to the Hill, which we'll talk about in a second, usually they are bipartisan. And so again, you're not going to have 435 members in the House agree on it unanimously all the time. I don't think that's what democracy really is all about, right? It's about compromise in many instances. And so, I wanted to add that, we want to arm our folks with, the best way to succeed, right? And to do that, oftentimes you have to pitch bipartisan issues in theory. And so, we are pretty sensitive to that. And I think we do a pretty good job, getting people ready for them. So,
yeah. I would say, as someone who has attended as well and sat through those meetings, being very nervous my first time, I do feel like NRCA does a fantastic job of really handing you the right tools to put in your toolkit to walk into those offices confident and to talk about these as everyday industry problems. These are not political in nature. These are problems that we're facing no matter where we are on the spectrum of our beliefs, our values. These are in order to move the industry forward.
Yeah, for sure.
So with that, let's dive into some of this year's key advocacy issues. What are we focusing on with these conversations this year?
Sure, absolutely. I'll just start off by saying, it's basically, in terms of the 30,000 foot level, it's two major issues. One is we're focused on solutions to our workforce shortages. And of course, that's been a perennial issue with respect to Roofing Day, because workforce issues have been perennial in the roofing industry for a long, long time. And then also, which is new this year, is a focus on affordable housing, because we do have a big affordable housing crisis in the United States, and the roofing industry plays a significant role in that. And then just to drill down now a little bit with respect to our solutions to workforce shortages, excuse me, there's basically 4 components. Number one, and the first two are immigration. And of course, immigration is controversial, as we know. But again, these are both the two bills that we're focused on that are solutions with respect to immigration policy are bipartisan. They have support from both Democrats and Republicans. And the first one is called the Dignity Act. And that legislation basically deals with many immigrants who are here under temporary protected status, and so they're actually here legal, but they may be losing their temporary protected status. Then we have others that are in the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, which is a program that's been set up. So they do have documentation and they are currently legal, but they have the possibility that they could lose that. And then there's also, we do know there are undocumented individuals in our workforce. There have been for 20 years and even longer. And so this legislation would deal with giving all of those individuals the opportunity to earn permanent status, permanent legal status, not citizenship, because that when you get into the citizenship and the ability to vote and take other benefits of citizenship, that gets a little bit more controversial. But just to give them legal status, to the opportunity to earn legal status, I should stress. And so it basically would stabilize the roofing industry's workforce. And then it also does some other things. It strengthens border security. It has mandatory E-Verify phased in for all employers. And it also has some workforce training provisions. And so that legislation is one bill. The other bill is the Essential Workers for Economic Advancement Act, which is basically a reform of the U.S. visa system. And that would allow for legal immigration in line with economic demand going forward. So that's kind of our two-track approach. Deal with the people who are here with the one bill, and then the other bill, it's a visa program to provide for future workforce needs within our industry through legal immigration. And then, two other aspects of our workforce shortages is and we mentioned this earlier, career and technical education, which has really taken off in Washington, D.C. And we did, back in the first inaugural Roofing Day, we supported legislation to reform the career and technical education programs which are basically federal funding going to the state level. Those programs have been growing thanks to what happened back in 2018, but we need to keep up the momentum. So we're going to supporting more funding for career and technical education. It's what we call Perkins CTE state grants. And then finally, we do have legislation has to do with workforce training programs that are in existence. Some of our members have been able to take advantage of them to help with workforce development, but many have not. And we have identified some legislation that has some reforms that would streamline the bureaucracy, improve the existing workforce training programs that are out there, and we think that could be very successful in adding another tool for our members. So that's basically, and we have a position paper where that's all outlined, and then we're going to be talking more in our briefing sessions about those issues.
And then I think go ahead, Will.
I would just say, Dwayne, you guys always do a great job. You have a preparation packet for all of us to read and be prepared going there. I was nervous when I first went to the ones. Sometimes I'm nervous even the first time I go in again into some of the places, but I find that the staff that we meet with, or the congressman, or sometimes the senator, are very welcoming to NRCA. It's highly respected as an organization there. And so the door is open to bring this forth. They are wanting to hear our message. They wanting to hear from people that are contractors, distributors, manufacturers. They want to know what affects their district and how they can do things to support us. So it is a really positive, open environment, and we're glad to just be a part of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point, Will. I mean, Dwayne and I can go to these offices until we're blue in the face, but it's a whole different story when constituents are in there saying the same thing. And so, again, the value of Roofing Day as a whole is just that. So, just really quickly, I know we're talking about issues that we mentioned. There's two issues. The second issue is affordable housing. Dwayne mentioned it's a new area for us this year. The last few years we've done sort of tax reform. Well, that's kind of, I don't want to say it's been solved, but with the One Big Beautiful Bill last July, a lot of those have been enacted. And so we worked with our Roofing Day Advisory Committee in developing potential policy topics, and housing was one that resonated with them quite well. Affordability as a whole, right, is a kind of a buzzword on Capitol Hill. Going back to us putting members and registrants in the best position to succeed, you also want to talk about timely things as well. You want to be bipartisan. You want to talk about timely issues, and affordability is a timely issue, both for Republicans and Democrats. And there's major buckets with respect to affordability. Housing is probably the biggest one when people between that and healthcare, right? And so, what a great opportunity for our members to sort of kind of talk about the roofing industry and the critical role that we have to play in the supply part of that, which is the big problem right now. And so, we kind of designed sort of this issue around two specific bills, and it's really just to get their foot in the door to talk about affordability, talk about housing. But specifically the two bills, the first one is the Revitalizing Downtowns and Main Streets Act. The bill number is HR 2410. And that would establish a federal tax credit to facilitate the conversion of older, underutilized commercial buildings to residential housing. Again, sort of approaching it from the supply side. The second bill is actually bicameral, so there's a House and a Senate bill. The Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. The House bill number is HR 2854. The Senate bill number is S1686. And this is another federal tax credit legislation. Only this time it would incentivize building new or repairing residential homes in certain rural and urban areas around the U.S. Again, we're really excited about this issue. It's a new one, right? But we have such a great role to play, and we want to be able to tell that story. And and we feel as if by bringing up bills like this, I think that starts the conversation. And so we're really excited on kind of the feedback that we get, and the follow-up conversations that are had from that. We certainly are looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think it's such a cool. I just always appreciate the fact that you're able to take these big bills in legislation that, a lot of people hear you rattle off numbers and don't really understand. And you're able to break it down into these one-pagers that really show how these bills relate to our industry specifically, so that then we are equipped with the wording and that conversation starter to go in and have these meetings. I think we've already answered this question, but what are some other ways besides, you have your keynote speaker, you have the one-pagers, you give us this toolkit to go into these meetings. What are some other ways that NRCA prepares and supports attendees maybe in real time, even before they're meeting with legislators?
Sure. Well, yeah, I'll just say a few things. Number one, we partner with a consultant. The name of the firm is Advocacy Associates. We've partnered with them way back since the inaugural Roofing Day in DC in 2018. They're the best in DC with respect to doing the scheduling of the congressional meetings. So in particular, for those who haven't been here, that's all done for you. You just register. The meetings are scheduled for you. You will get your meetings, and Advocacy Associates has an app. So all of the information on the meetings goes on your phone. And then in addition, we, as Will mentioned earlier, we do provide a packet of hard copy of the schedule and a lot in the position papers and whatnot. Of course, I would mention the position papers are already on our website, so people can already review those now at this time. And then a lot of the other information will be going out about a week before. So yeah, I mean, and then we talk further about tips for how to handle your meetings and how to conduct your meetings. Both in the packets, there's information, and then we also talk about that verbally in the advocacy training sessions that we run.
And the app is really easy to use, and it helps you get to the locations you have to do to meet with who you're supposed to, and get you there on time. And it allows you to provide feedback and support, push it out on social media, all the things that help resonate a larger voice for us on the Hill there. So download the app when you're coming and use it. It's quite valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been talking a lot about what to expect, particularly for those who haven't been to Roofing Day before. And Will, you are a pro at this. You have been there. I actually, I'll share really quick my personal story of my first day attending Roofing Day 2 years ago. I was the only one in my state that was registered, and I was a first timer. And so Will actually volunteered to go to about half of my meetings with me in order to go talk to these officials and have these conversations so that I wasn't completely by myself. So I really appreciate that from you. But can you give us a little bit of insight onto what your first experience was like, and then kind of how it has evolved?
Well, I think my first experience is I wore the wrong color. I think NRCA wears their red ties and so forth. So I have to get that right. We always have blue logos, so there's always that kind of funny thing about make sure I'm dressed appropriately. Professionally, of course, but appropriately.
Well, the good thing, Will, at least don't have a red lanyard. So if you still wear your blue coatings, right? I mean, you'll have a little red on. So, I don't, who's to say, but.
Exactly. And I think, most of America is actually sometimes purple rather than really red and blue. So, the first time experience was really quite, a little bit scary for me. I have to say, I wasn't used to getting up on the Hill and meeting people. And I thought, whoa, what did I jump into? And, you guys made it easy. And so much so that we brought several people back inside of our company. We've got a new person coming, Scott, for this event. And, we're believing that it's really pretty straightforward. You get there, you network, you understand a little bit about what it takes to get in front of Congress. We're not down in the big hall. We're in offices where we meet informally with people, and sometimes it's around a table, sometimes it's in the big congressional office. Mm-hmm. And it's really pretty straightforward. It's a conversation about what we want to see happen, and we provide them an ask and say how is important it is and what we represent as far as votes and size of our industry and how critical it is for us. And we explain it with real stories and what is important for roofing to be heard. And they're very open to it. So, I think it's one of the environments that if you're bringing another member of your team, particularly people who are out on the roof, that's what we'd like to see. Additional people who are really doing the work of roofing. It really resonates with the congressional folks. They want to know that they're going to help this business and this industry.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. Thank you. We'll stick with you for the moment and say, maybe some advice that you shared with Scott before he's coming next week, or in 2 weeks, I guess. What advice would you give to first-time attendees, but also maybe people who have attended multiple times to help them feel prepared and confident walking onto the hill that day?
I would just say first, relax and enjoy it. It's a great positive experience. There's never been a concern of any risk, endangerment, or controversial discussion with people. We're all talking about a topic that we're all passionate about, that we're all believers in, and they're open to hearing our message. So it's really not something to get too excited that or nervous that we're going to be off track here. I think it's well organized, and my message to Scott is come, network, be a part of it, listen, and when you see the right opportunities, tell your story. Tell people what matters in your district. He's out of the Connecticut area. It's a small state, but it's a strong state. They want their voice heard too about roofing, and so that's my say is when there's a window, jump in and tell the truth. Tell it what's important. Don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just add. I mean, last time I checked, there are no members of Congress that are roofers before they became members of Congress. So I can almost guarantee you the people that are going into these offices, on our behalf, on the event's behalf, they will know more about the issue than the folks they're talking to. They are the experts. I think I said that earlier. And so if you can sort of have that, people can have that mindset, maybe that might, allow them to have a little bit more confidence going in. But I think going back to the first time attendees, I mean, we certainly understand that a lot of people who've never done this before, they may be out of their element, right? They don't know what to expect, and that's absolutely fine. We try to pair first time attendees with veterans. Danny, you kind of made that point. So we're mindful of that. So we do our best to try to pair people up if they're especially if they're alone in their state and they've never been. I mean, so that's sort of a priority of ours. For sure. I will say, there is an element of prep work involved too. So if you can go over the one pagers, right, and familiarize yourself with the talking points and how those, these issues impact your business, have that personal story ready to go. And so as to Will's point, when the time is right, you will have thought in advance, and be prepared, so there is an element of prep work that, we would recommend as well. But again, for first timers in particular, we understand, and we've been doing this for a while, and I think we got a pretty good feel on sort of, calming everyone's nerves and preparing them as much as we can. So, yeah.
And you got a great success rate. I mean, look at all the things that NRCA has supported, and over the years, the needle's been moved, and we've, as an industry, participated in getting the positive outcomes. So, it's a worthwhile endeavor. That's what I say. Success happens.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Got to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that segues really well, because I do think advocacy is kind of the long haul, right? It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so it can be really challenging sometimes when you're like, oh, we're talking about workforce challenges again. And it's not that, right? There has been so much progress that's being made, and it really is so important to be showing up. So can we dispel some of those common misconceptions about participating in advocacy events and why you should still be here?
Well, I mean, I think one misconception is that you have to be a policy expert to come back and talk to your legislators. No, you just need to understand a little bit about the issues, and again, just a little bit, and how they impact your business, and be willing to tell your story as to how things are going in your business and what the challenges are that you face. And so, the solutions that we present as part of our position papers are there. Most of the members of Congress are pretty familiar with them at this point. And so they just want to hear from people back in their state or district as to, okay, what are you as a business person experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and how can we I'm speaking as a member of Congress or a congressional staffer now, how can we be helpful? And some of them already are, some of them have already co-sponsored this legislation, and we're going to be thanking them. But it's basically just coming back and telling your story from your perspective as a roofing contractor or manufacturer, distributor, whatever role you play in the industry. You want to share that with the lawmakers and staff.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. Brad, anything to add?
So I'll just add, another maybe misconception when people go up there is they think they're expected to answer questions that they're asked from members of Congress and staff. If you don't know the answer to it, the last thing you want to do is make up something to respond. So again, it goes into that conversation. You're the expert in the topic. If they ask you something that you don't necessarily know, that's what the NRCA DC office is for. That's what the follow-ups are for, right? Which we'll get to in a second. That's really important to do follow-up. That's a perfect reason to follow up and say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm happy to circle back and and let you know it, in a week. That's perfectly okay. And so again, you're not expected to know everything. You are expected to be the person in the field, to be the person that's going through the workforce shortages or seeing the need for housing and the supply. And you can tell your story from that perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. So really that just leaves what happens afterward. The event ends, we all go home. We still want there to be momentum after we've had these conversations. So what does that look like? How can attendees stay engaged?
Again, going back to the NRCA DC office, that's what we're there. That's what we're here for, right? We want to facilitate follow-up meetings, follow-up conversations. That is the most important part of this. I will say, on my time when I was on the Hill, there were so many instances where I would meet with the same person from our district on the same issue every year, and I never heard from them until the following year when they were in town for the fly-in. Hill staff, members of Congress, they go through so many issues. They're handling so many different meetings. It's really easy to become out of sight, out of mind, right? And so that follow-up is so important. And again, you can do that locally. Every House member has district offices that, depending on the size of the district, is relatively close driving distance, right? So you can do a lot of those things locally. You can lean on us to facilitate an email connection, whatever sort of is your preference, as attendees go, we can certainly make that work. And so, but that follow-up is critical. And we want to have those conversations ongoing. It's also important to develop those relationships, and you only do that by continuing to have the conversations. And so I would encourage everyone to come to DC, but then also do sort of that follow-up. And again, we're here to help with that however we can.
I would just say that we've had members of Congress come to our facilities. Yeah. We've met with them at their offices. We've resonated the same talking points that it's important to us. And, not only did we do the fly-in, but we're here in person to tell you again, please listen, please help us. Here's our ask, and here's the professionals if you want any of the details in the NRCA to support and give you the fine points. We think it's important that advocacy be a year-round endeavor, and that the outcomes we get come from hard work, and they come from people just being bold about, hey, this is important. I'm going to tell you about it, and I need you to listen and do something for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Even just a thank you email goes so far. Yeah. I remember doing that after my first roofing day and sending it to, I was trying to be personal about it. And so I remembered that his daughter was running a marathon. And so we had talked about running marathons. And so I added that in my thank you note of like, hey, I hope your daughter's marathon went great. Thank you so much for sitting down and taking the time to talk to us about these important issues in the roofing industry. And I got a response. Maybe it was from his staff and not directly from him, but regardless, somebody is reading it and somebody is recognizing that we took this time to go make this effort to talk about these issues that are so important.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd like to jump in one point here at the end, which is a lot of these issues really affect a lot of people. And employment issues and immigration issues affect real people.
Oh, yeah.
And government and democracy is not an exact science. It gets things right many times, and then it fails and has to reset and figure it out again. And, the issues right now are impacting people as to whether or not they can stay in the United States, whether or not they can work and be contributors to the success of America. And they need voices. They need people to stand up and say, hey, maybe we need to make adjustments here, the Dignity Act, things like that, so that America continues to grow. These people who are good American citizens, even only in name, are able to work and be a part of it. And my daughter and son just got into a house last year, and blessings that they were able to do that, but many can't. And we need to help them get into housing so America can thrive, because living in an apartment is just not the right way to go forward. America is about ownership. It's about entrepreneurial. It's about growth. It's about success. And NRCA resonates that message really well. And I think we all need to step up and support it, make sure that the voices are heard there in DC.
Very well said.
Absolutely.
I think I couldn't have summed it up any better, Will. Thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen, all for being here and sharing such an important day and helping bring the industry together every year for Roofing Day in DC. As we mentioned earlier, you can register yourself by going to nrca.net/roofing day. You can also find that same link on NRCA's directory at rooferscoffeeshop.com. And you have until April 7th now to register instead of April 3rd. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
If you've enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us on every roofing adventure. Make sure to visit rooferscoffeeshop.com to learn more. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next roofing road trip.